Now that I understand that when I own assets that can essentially produce the income that I would normally have to work for, the more assets I own, the more of my life I can buy back. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of Financial Freedom Fastlane. And I'm your host, George Acheampong, and you know the saying. So today is a very, very interesting topic. Today we're going to talk about the quicker you get to your dream life, the longer you get to enjoy it. How you can quantify the value of your time, understand how to shift your paradigm around how you spend your money. We're also going to talk about when or if you should delegate and outsource something, right? And most importantly, how you can literally buy back hours of your life. This is one of those episodes where you're going to need a pen, paper, take some notes, maybe pause it, just to really grasp the nuance of what I'm saying. Now, I'm going to break it down in a very easy and practical way, but this train of thought, this methodology was revolutionary when I was reframing how I thought about using my time and using my money, right? So let's get into it. First things first, housekeeping stuff. Sorry, just got back from the gym and I had a decision to make, right? So my son is asleep. I was like, do I go upstairs, shower up, change? But my closet where I would go get my clothes is actually in his room. Some of my clothes are in his room. So I was like, that's probably not a good idea. So I said, well, they're going to get this workout shirt today because consistency is more important than any other fashion statement that I wanted to make on this particular show. It's about the content, right? So let's get into it. Well, you know what? Before we get into it, have you guys tuned in to the Melanin Money Show? So the Melanin Money Show is our flagship series on the Melanin Money Media Network, where this particular show is housed. And we are on episode 94, which means we are just 6 episodes away from, from 100 episodes, right? 6 episodes away from 100 episodes. A guy who couldn't count from 94 to 100. I'm not sure if you want to listen to him on a money topic, but it's 11 o'clock at night. I'm tired. I just finished the workout. Give me some grace. But the reason why I bring that up is because I want to make sure that you guys are tapping into that episode or that series as well. We're super excited about that. Literally every single Wednesday since August of 2021, we have been consistent, have not missed an episode through all sorts of life circumstances, not feeling like it, timing, energy, etc. So we are very, very proud of that milestone. And I want you to make sure that you're checking out those episodes as well. And we would really appreciate if you could head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, and also subscribe to the episode because we are, I think it was up to 90, right? The top 90 in all of business podcasts. And there are thousands upon thousands of podcasts. So that's a really, really important feat. And we hope that when we get to our 100th episode, that we can really get a lot of momentum and maybe even crack the top 50. So matter of fact, Donald, let's create a marketing plan around that. All right, so let's get into this week's episode. All right, so first things first. We want to be able to quantify the value of your time. Why do we want to quantify the value of your time? Because it's important to know what your time is worth. Now, full disclaimer, I'm not saying that once you get your number that this is what your time is truly worth. I understand that your time is priceless. And that's the very reason why I'm doing this episode, right? But as it relates to the income that you earn, right, there's a dollar amount attached to it that we can back into, whether you have an hourly rate, right, that you already know, or whether you have a salary. So let's assume that you have a salary and that you make about 60 grand a year, right? They said the average American makes between 50 to 55. I'm gonna round it up and I'm gonna say that you make 60, right? And so if you make 60 grand a year, that translates to $5,000 a month, right? So if you make $5,000 a month and you look at the amount of hours that you work in a month, right? Then you can determine your hourly rate. So how do we back into that? So if you make $5,000 a month, right? And you work about 40 hours a week, let's assume that you go on vacation for 2 weeks a year. So that means you're working 50 hours a week. Okay. If you're working 50 hours a week, you take $40 hours a week times 50. That's going to give you about 166 hours if you divide it by 12, right? So you take 40 hours a week times 50, right? That's going to give you a bigger number. Then you take that number and divide it by 12 because there's 12 months in a year. And that's going to give you your average amount of hours that you work in any given month, which in this case is 166 hours. So Donald, we're going to be very numbers heavy on this episode. So let's make sure that we throw some graphics on the screen for our people so they can follow along. And for those of you who don't know by now, Donald is our wonderful podcast editor. He edits both our audio for the Melanin Money Show, and he edits all of our videos and does the thumbnails as well. So let's give Donald a big shout out, because if it wasn't for him, you wouldn't see a lot of this content. Why? Because I'm creating this video right now at like 11:30 at night, the day before it's due, which I try not to do, but sometimes it happens. But we're still going to be consistent. And when you got good people on your team, you can always get it done. All right, so let's get back to the content. So now we know that you work about 166 hours a month. You make did I tell you how much I make yet? Sorry. You make $5,000 a month. So you take $5,000 a month divided by the amount of hours that you work, and that is going to give you your hourly rate, which in this case is about $30 an hour, right? Now, this number is powerful because now we can start to back into how much of our life are we trading for the things that we buy. This is the first thing, right? How much of my life am I trading for the things that I buy? So how do we back into that? Let's say that you have a car and that car payment is $600 per month, right? And let's say it costs you about $300 a month in gas and about $100 a month in insurance. So all in, you're at about $1,000 a month, right, for this car, $1,000 for the cost of ownership. Now, if I were to ask you how much your car costs, right, or how much it costs you to own your car on a monthly basis, you might say $1,000. But with this new framework, you now know that it's not $1,000. It's 33 hours of your life. And there's this quote that I live by, right? The quote is, the value of anything is the amount of life you're willing to trade for it. So now you know that you're trading 33 hours of your life for the car. Now, if you love the car, if you drive it every day, if it's your dream car, then maybe that makes sense, right? Maybe you can justify it. But for most people, I bet when they hear that for the first time, it's like, whoa. Do I really want to trade 33 hours of my life for a car that I barely drive, right? That is collecting dust most of the time. If you work 40 hours in a week, right, it's taking you almost a full work week just to be able to afford the car. Now, I don't know about you guys, but for me, that was a complete paradigm shift, because now I'm looking at things through a completely different lens. And I'm thinking about, well, how much life am I trading for this particular item, purchase, whatever the case may be? Now, the next takeaway on this point is like, okay, well, how can I make sure that I increase my earning potential so that I still can buy the things that I care about, but now they make up a much lesser percentage of life that I'm allocating to be able to afford it, right? Because if you're trading hundreds of hours in a year, right, to be able to afford something, you got to ask yourself, is it really worth it, right? Because time is your most precious asset, right? And if you're trading 33 hours for a car that you barely drive, I don't know about you, but that doesn't seem like it's worth it. So it really gives you kind of this eye-opening experience to start to look at things differently. Like, is that really worth it? Do I really want to trade that much of my life for that purchase, right? So once you back into the value of your time, now you can know how much life you're trading for the things that you buy. Let's move on to point number 2. Point number 2 is, now that we know the value of our time, now that we know how much life we have to trade to acquire certain items, the next thing we want to know is, when is it okay to outsource and delegate something, right? And here's how we make that determination. So let's just say that you don't like cleaning your house and you're like, I want to hire a cleaning lady. Okay, cool. So basically the simple equation is if you look at how many hours it takes the cleaning people to clean your house and what you pay them, you can determine if it makes more economic sense for you to do it based upon what your time is worth, or if it makes more sense to outsource it, right? So let's look at this example. Let's say you hire a cleaning company, two ladies come out and they charge you $120 to clean your house. And let's say, since there's two of them, it takes them about 2 hours to do, right? I think probably takes them longer than that, but for this example, let's say 2 hours. Okay, so that's $120 for 2 hours. Now, we know that 2 hours of your time in this example is worth 60, which is actually literally half of the amount of money that it costs to pay the cleaning ladies. So in this example, if we're just being objective, technically, that's not something you should outsource. You're not losing money it's not costing you money, right, to be doing the work yourself, right? But it is costing you money to outsource it because they charge more, right, than your hourly rate. Now, we could argue that it would take you 3 hours because it's just you make $30 an hour. So now we're at 90, still not quite at 120, right? But again, if we're just being objective, in this example, it would make sense for you to do it. Now, I'm not saying that if it's within your budget, right? Because I'm a really big fan of value-based budgeting and spending your time on the things that align with your values, right? So if during that time you might be able to spend some time with family or just relax or whatever the case may be, as long as it's within your budget, then maybe it's still okay, right? It doesn't have to always be like black and white. But if you do want to have an objective way to approach it, right, this is a way that you can quantify it. If it would cost you less money to do it yourself than it would if you paid somebody else. Now, let's look at it in a scenario that might be more realistic, right? So like hiring somebody in your business. So let's say that you always find yourself like hopping in Canva and doing graphic design work and just like, really just not say wasting your time, but like spending more time on something that really isn't high value relative to the skill set and the value that you bring to the business. And then you hop on Fiverr.com or you hop on like Upwork or one of these sites and you find a virtual assistant or a graphic designer who charges, let's call it $7 an hour, right, for graphic design work. And based upon the amount of time it's going to take them to do it, right, in that scenario, it would make so much more sense for you to outsource. Because if it only took them, let's say 3 hours, that's $21. But let's say because you don't really know what you're doing and it took you the same amount of time, 3, 4, maybe even 5 hours, it would be more costly to you to actually do that versus just going ahead and outsourcing it to somebody else, right? So those are situations in your business or in your life where you can start to quantify when it makes sense to do something yourself or outsource it to another person. All right, and let's get into our last point. This one is a really, really powerful thought process, right? And I just want to give you a disclaimer. I'm not saying that how I break this down is how you should approach retirement, how you should approach investing, or how you should even use the investment capital that you have. What it does for me is it gives me a mental framework to understand the value of investing my money versus buying liabilities or spending it on things that make me actually work more versus work less, right? So I want to just give that disclaimer. I don't want y'all running out saying, George told me to take off for a year and here's how I should do it. I'm not saying that. Now, if that makes sense to you and you want to do that, you can. I'm just giving the disclaimer that that's not the point of this exercise we're about to go through, okay? Now that we got that out the way, here is a philosophy and a framework that just shifted my perspective on allocating money towards things that matter, right? So let's break it down like this. Let's say that you Google some stocks and you figure out that your favorite stock or a stock that you research that you feel like is pretty valuable is priced currently at $200 a share, okay? Stock is priced at $200 a share. And now that we know the value of your time, we know that just by math, that since that's an asset, for every share of this stock that you own, let's just call it Apple, because we all know and love Apple. For every share of this Apple stock that you own at $200, right? For the people watching this, no, Apple isn't currently priced at $200. I'm just using it as an example, right? For every share that you own, you can buy back 6.6 hours of your life, right? Let's just round it up to 7. Now, how did I back into that math? Remember, your time is worth $30 an hour, right? So if we understand the value of the share price and we understand the value of my time in terms of hours, we can back into the fact that $200 a share of this stock that we're calling Apple is the equivalent to 6.6, or let's call it 7 hours of work, or 7 hours of your time. Now, here's where it gets really, really interesting, because it's like, okay, now that I understand that when I own assets that can essentially produce the income, right, that I would normally have to work for, the more assets I own, right, the more of my life I can buy back. It's a very powerful concept. So let's just say in this example that you were like, I want to take off an entire year. I want to have a sabbatical, right? And in order to do that, what's a logical thought process? A logical thought process is, well, I would need a year's worth of my income, which in this example is $60,000, right? So if I need $60,000, right, what is that in terms of Apple stock, right? In this example, that would mean that you would need 300 shares of Apple, right? Because 300 shares times $200 per share, that's $60,000, right? If you had that in a portfolio, you could effectively buy back over 2,000 hours of your life, right? Because that's about how many hours you're going to work in a year. How powerful is that? Just think about that. Oftentimes, because we just go through the motion from week to week to week, you don't really realize that if you work 40 hours a week, or at least that's what you get paid for, you're trading 2,000 hours of your life. And I'm sitting here breaking down a strategy that can shift your paradigm around why it's so important to invest. And the reason why I wanted to approach it this way, because when I talk to people about retirement or financial independence, most people just think it's about age, right? Well, I have worked for X amount of years and eventually I can just stop. It's not how it works, right? Retirement has nothing to do with age. It has everything to do with assets, right? So in this example, if you wanted to take a year sabbatical and you had $60,000 worth of Apple stock, which is the equivalent to 1 year's worth of income, you can take 100% of that, right? And now take a whole year off. Now, what does this look like in more practical terms, right? In more practical terms, now you understand that when you own assets, the whole objective is how can I get to a point with my investments that every year, right, I can use the money from my investments to fund my lifestyle. Now, the strategy that I would give you that I'm not going to get into on this episode, maybe I'll do it on the next one. The strategy that I would give you is not going to require you to sell 100% of your shares, right, in order to fund your lifestyle. There's actually a percentage and an equation that you can do in order to just sell a certain amount that is actually lower than the amount of value that your portfolio will appreciate from year to year, so that you effectively don't run out of money. Because if you just sold your shares every single month, right, or every single year, then you could potentially run out of money. So my strategy will show you how not to run out of money, but I just want you to understand the power of investing in literally being able to buy back your time, right? So when you think about investing, don't think about it as like, this is the thing that adults do. This is what I'm supposed to do. Think about it like, I now understand that every time I invest, I'm buying back hours of my life. Guys, I hope this was helpful for you. This paradigm thought process was really, really helpful for me. I actually created a calculator that can kind of show you the value of your time, the value of spending money on certain items, or delegating and outsourcing things, and actually what would be the rate of return if you invested the money instead. So that is actually a resource inside the Melanin Millionaires Club. The Melanin Millionaires Club is a community of like-minded, aspiring first-generation millionaires, or people who are on their way to becoming first-generation millionaires. And so we want to help 100,000 people achieve their first 1 million in net worth. And so inside this club, you can come with us, hang out, learn, connect, grow, and hit your first 1 million in net worth and learn about how you can invest. So hopefully this episode was helpful. If you like this episode, be sure to give it a like, give it a thumbs up, smash the subscribe button, leave a comment, and please, please, please share this episode with somebody, a friend, a family member, anybody who you think will find this information valuable. And remember, freedom is for sale as long as you're willing to pay the price. Until next time, guys, peace.